Famous historical events that never actually happened. I think one of them is Tommy Energy getting rejected. Because I've never gotten rejected. Right, guys? Tommy getting rid of the fro. Yeah, that never happened. As a matter of fact, let's watch this.
Famous historical events that never actually happened. All right, this is a big one.
Okay.
Einstein failing math in high school.
I've never heard of that. They said Einstein failed math? How the f would he have failed math? Wasn't he literally like the smartest person to ever exist? Yo, Nick just hate to hate, bro. Nah, you know for a fact back then they probably saw Einstein, how smart he was, and they were like, make up a rumor saying he failed math. He was probably mad as f, bro, because he was literally famous just off of being smart. He's not the smartest, but he is smart. Who is the smartest human being, actually, to ever exist? I'm assuming it's gonna be the person with the highest IQ, right? William James Sidis. What did this dude do? Let's see. He enrolled at Harvard at 11? What the fuck? Yo, he got it, bro. Young Sheldon, that is insane, bro. At 11, you're still in elementary school, right? So that means at like 7, he was in high school. We got no excuse. This is the type of your mom shows you and it's like, you gotta be like this. Why weren't you like this? Nah, bro, I remember being in high school, bro. All my mom would show me, bro, is some motherfucker that graduated with like 5 degrees and saying like, wow, you're gonna be like this, son. And then meanwhile, now I'm a community college dropout. Hey, well, guess what? She would have never known I'd become Tom NFG. Am I right, y'all? She would have never fucking known. Like, come on, this is way better. This is way better than enrolling out Harvard at 11. Am I right, y'all? Like, come on now. The knowledge you get from me compared to this nigga is insane. I get way more knowledge. I'm kidding, by the way. I finished community college. Okay, I just didn't transfer. Yo, they got footage of Einstein in HD.
We scientists who release this immense power
This is kind of creepy.
have overwhelming responsibility for benefit of man.
Yo, this is
and
kind of
not
cool.
for mankind's destruction.
Yo, it's wild, y'all, that in the future, bro, that's gonna be us. Like, there's gonna be kids born in like 2100 being like, damn, this person was born in like motherfucking, what, like 03, 04, 05, like that.
This trope has been used by underachievers since the middle of the 20th century to excuse their crappy grades. Hey mom, you should be happy with that D I got in math. Even Einstein failed math. You could even say him.
See, I should've. Why didn't you tell me this, bro? You know what my mom would have said? She would have been like, are you Einstein? No, you're my son. Do better. That's a legit, bro, what my mom would have fucking said.
Smarter than Einstein. Hate to break it to you, but it's not true. You better get used to making those fries. Einstein was a mathematical genius, pretty much from the jump. By age 12, he was studying algebra and geometry on his own. And by 14 or 15, he was already delving into calculus. Several years ahead of most of his peers.
And he was doing it when it was lame as f. I mean, don't get it wrong, it's lame as f now. I remember when I had to take calculus in college, that shit's lame. But yeah, he was doing it when it was extra boring.
The struggles that he did have in school were with subjects that required a rigid rote-style learning, like history and French. No one's sure where the myth originated exactly, but the best theory suggests that it came from the fact that Einstein went to school in Switzerland, and the Swiss use a grading system from 1 to 6, with 6 being the best grade and 1 being the worst. And that was the opposite of the rest of Europe, where 1 was the top grade. Einstein himself even addressed this myth in an article in the Times magazine. When shown a clipping claiming he had failed math, he reportedly laughed and said, "I have never failed in mathematics. Before I was 15, I had mastered differential and integral."
Nah, he had the flex, bro. He said, "What did y'all niggas think this was?" Hey guys, Tom NFG here. You know, only half of you guys are subscribed and even less of you guys have noties on. I hate to be a burden, but you know, I really appreciate it if you hit that sub button and the little bell next to it. You know, it doesn't take long. I know you can get mixed up in the algorithm and everything. But yeah, also tune into the streams. You know, we have a lot of fun over there. I'm telling you, we have a lot of parties going on over there. Yeah, that's it. Bye. Damn. Y'all are dumb as shit, bro. I've been doing this, bro, when y'all was in diapers.
Terrible news for the slackers. In the US, school children are taught from an early age that the courageous Christopher Columbus set
Literally everybody knows Christopher Columbus didn't find America.
off on an epic journey to prove that the Earth is round and not flat.
Oh, never mind.
Cool story, but completely inaccurate. In reality, Columbus had the idea in his head that the Atlantic Ocean was much smaller than was commonly thought, and that he could sail east on the Atlantic and find a shortcut to Asia. In fairness to Chris, people had only known the Earth was round for about 2,000 years. As early as the 6th century BCE, Greek philosophers like Pythagoras speculated that the Earth was round. And
oh my god, is that where the Pythagorean theorem comes from? It comes from him? Why did I just think of that? Pythagoras comes from him?
Speculated that the Earth was round. And later in the 4th century BCE, Aristotle noted that the Earth casts a round shadow on the moon during a lunar eclipse, and that the travelers going south see new constellations rise in the sky, both of which are consistent with a spherical planet. And in the 3rd century BCE, the Greek mathematician Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy using simple geometry. His estimate was around 25,000. Pretty good guess, since the real number is roughly 24,901.
What? It's crazy how, like, they were so advanced back then with, like, very little. Like, even the way they found out about, like, timing and how to work it. Then again, they didn't have any distractions, no smartphones, nothing. They just kind of had, like, life. They didn't even have TV, bro. They may have had, like, 1 or 2 books. They had nothing else to do, so they were like, let me figure this out.
1 miles.
Tommy's holding us back? How am I holding you back, nigga? You could do something right now! Do something right now with your life, then.
And given that he was using pretty much just sticks, that is insanely impressive. So what did Chris actually prove? Mainly, he proved that when it came to guessing the size of the Atlantic Ocean or how to get to Asia, he pretty much sucked. Although technically you could get to Asia by sailing east from Spain, your path is going to be going through North, South, and Central America. The scholars of the day theorized the ship couldn't take enough supplies to make the journey. Had Columbus not landed on Cuba, there's no question that he and his crew would have run out of supplies a long time before they got to Asia. From the time they enter grade school, American children are taught about 6-year-old George Washington receiving an axe as a gift, and then going out and chopping down his father's cherry tree. When his father asked who did it, because yeah, apparently seeing a 6-year-old boy holding a hatchet that was dripping with cherry tree sap wasn't enough of a clue, young George replied, "I cannot tell a lie. You know I cannot tell a lie. I did cut it with my hatchet. And instead of..."
Does this even matter? Why is this even taught? I think I do know this, but like, who gives a bro? Yo, American education all the way out the window. Like, who cares about this?
Being angry, his father gave him such a big old hug and told George how proud he was to have an honest son. Before we get to how this story isn't true at all, can we start with the obvious question? Namely, who in the hell gives an axe to a 6-year-old child?
Yeah.
I know gift options were a lot more limited back then.
Never heard of
No video
this.
games, no
I
Hot
don't blame
Wheels. But an axe? What did the grandfather...
I mean, back then, bro, shit, their life expectancy was like, what, 35 max, maybe? Probably like 1/3 through his life already. They had kids sweeping chimneys, bro, at like 7 years old.
America think was gonna happen. Anyway, this whole cherry tree thing wasn't told as a true story, but as a simple way to create basically a fable. Since the USA was a young nation, there was a desire in those early days to transform from historical individuals into almost mythical heroes. And who better to go all mythy on than the leader of the Continental Army and the first president? The cherry tree story first appeared in a book written by Mason Locke Weems in 1800, just a year after Washington's death. And the first clue that the story was BS? This was the 5th edition of the book, but the first time the cherry tree was mentioned. Anyway, yeah, just crazy how it got so popular. The Chicago Fire.
Just saying shit, bro.
The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 is one of the most infamous disasters in American history, taking over 300 lives and leaving over 100,000 residents homeless. And if you remember hearing about the fire, it's almost certainly because you know the story of Mrs. O'Leary's cow knocking over a lantern and kicking off the whole shebang.
Never heard of this.
And since buildings in the 1800s were mainly constructed of dry wood and oily rags, it didn't take long for the bovine blaze to grow, eventually jumping the Chicago River and destroying much of downtown Chicago. And how did the cow get the blame for this horrific event? Well, by now you may not be...
I would have fried that cow up the next day and made the best burgers that ever exist.
Surprised to find out it was completely made up by an unscrupulous newspaper reporter who was looking for clicks. Or, as they called it back then, selling newspapers. The story had 4...
So they were clickbaiting back then too? Yo, why is that hilarious? 1871 and 2025 now, and niggas is still acting the same. Get clickbaiting for views. Because you gotta think back then, like, there's no way. This cow. Why do I have a British accent? Chicago 1870. They're probably like, oh, this cow, what? Well, I'll be golly.
Things that Americans hated the most.
Clickbaiting in the big
was
1871.
Poor, she was Irish, she was Catholic, and last of all, she was a woman. People were looking for a convenient scapegoat, and Catherine O'Leary...
Nah, that's kind of fucked up, bro. Poor Irish immigrant woman's cow kicked over lantern.
Rechecked all the boxes. The story's main promoter was a journalist named Michael Ahern, who later admitted that he made up the whole cow kicking the lantern detail to spice up his report. But that admission was too little too late, because the cow story had already taken hold and started to grow some seriously deep roots. Many investigations were done in the following years, but the exact cause could never be
That's some
determined.
shit Fox News will make.
The fire
Yeah, but instead it will be like, Mexican gay transgender... Just insert every single fucking title that ever exists, bro. And that's modern times.
Began near or in the O'Leary's barn, but there is no solid evidence that Catherine O'Leary or her cow had anything to do with it. Catherine always said that she was in bed when the fire started. For all we know, it could have been careless smoking by a goat or a grease fire in the kitchen by one of the pigs. Over time, historians have come up with a couple of pretty solid theories about the fire. Refreshingly, neither theory involves any sort of farm animal. First, maybe neighborhood boys started it while sneaking a cigarette. That makes sense, because in the 1870s...
Yeah, I know the people that started that, bro, were probably like, fuck, what do we do? I'm not snitching. Yo, if it's me and my homies, bro, and you snitch, you getting murked.
All those 8-year-old boys wanted to do after a grueling 12-hour workday.
8 years old and smoking cigarettes is fucking insane. Can we talk about that? Low-key, we know different now, bro. Kids be vaping in the bathroom.
Factory was come back home and enjoy a nice, relaxing cigarette. The other theory sounds a little bit wacky, but it's plausible.
You literally do this.
A
No, I
meteor
don't.
shower could have sparked fires across the region, in Michigan and Wisconsin. Unlike a lot of
Newton.
completely made-up myths, the story of Isaac Newton and the apple has a tiny bit of truth to it. The story
Man, fuck that, bro. Nigga, Isaac Newton was not smart. Talking about, oh, an apple fell from the tree. That's how we found out what gravity was. Bro, have you lived? I found a gravity. Wow. Let's be real. This dude was the most narcissistic piece of shit to ever exist. Bro figured out gravity and named it a theory after his name. This nigga's not smart. Man, I wish I was born back then, bro. I would have named it Tommy NFG's goddamn theory and been the most famous person to ever exist.
story we've all heard is that Newton's lounging in his garden, sometime in the 1660s. Suddenly an apple falls, bonks him in the head, and voila. Newton immediately had the fully formed universal law of gravitation ready to publish. The truth is, as Newton said later in
fair, he
life,
made other
he
laws
was
of
sitting in his
physics.
garden after dinner, drinking tea underneath an apple tree. When he saw an apple fall to the ground, he began to think about the force that made the apple fall straight down, not side to side and not at an angle. But it wasn't a eureka moment. It was just one step on a journey that would take over 20 years and culminate with the publication of his Principia Mathematica in 1687. There was a lot more to it than getting smacked by an apple. Nero. Everyone's seen some variation of Nero, the crazed
What's
Roman
that?
emperor, wildly fiddling as you watch Rome burn. It's
I
an
don't
image
even know what
that's
this is.
seared in our brains, and the expression can be heard even today. But there are a couple reasons why we know this powerful image is completely made up. First of all, the fire that destroyed about 2/3 of Rome happened in 64 CE, roughly 1,000 years before the violin was invented. If you were playing anything, he likely would have been playing a kithara kind of lyre, and if he had been playing it that day, he would have been playing it at his villa in Antium, since most historians agree he wasn't even in Rome when the fire started. The earliest and most detailed accounts of the fire come from Roman historians Tacitus, Suetonius, and Cassius Dio. All three of them wrote long after
Yo, they had such aura, bro. Like, the Romans look so badass. I don't know if they just made themselves look badass, but I imagine if it was like now, they actually just look like this.
Nero's death, and the writing reflects a mixture of facts.
I mean, nowadays, bro, shoot, people be having those same type of beards and be looking at like them, so I'm assuming they actually look like that. Plus, think of it, they didn't have any like fast food or anything and whatnot. Like, they literally probably were all just fucking fit, just off of eating berries and bread and meat. Like, they were just all fit.
You're saying moral
They had
judgment.
natural
Tacitus,
diets.
writing about 50 years after the death of the emperor,
Some were evil
reports
freaks?
in
Oh,
the rumors
absolutely.
At the time that Nero started the fire to clear the way for a huge palace. At the same time, he notes that Nero wasn't even in Rome at the time, and when he got word of the fire, quickly came back to Rome to coordinate relief efforts, and opened his palaces to refugees, and arrange food
What a
supplies.
good guy.
It even seems like tales of Nero's exploits have been exaggerated for effect, because he was a very unconventional
Nowadays, bro, let's say, I don't know, something happened, bro. You got some refugees at the door, they're like, wait, do you have a gun? Who are you? Why do you want to come to my house?
ruler who acted on stage, raced chariots, and fancied himself a musician. All scandalous for a Roman emperor. His supposed performance during the fire was probably meant to be symbolic. The narrative caught fire because it fit the existing stereotype of a decadent ruler more interested in art than duty. Marie Antoinette. Many factors contributed to the French Revolution, but the reports of Marie Antoinette responding with "let them eat cake" when she was told the peasants were out of bread did not help. It summed up the attitude of the aristocracy and showed them to be completely out of touch with the common citizens.
I'm gonna be real, I don't have any history about the French Revolution. Bro, France be having a revolution every year nowadays. Why is it every year, bro? There's always niggas burning down France. I think France is just like the place of revolutions.
There's just one tiny problem. She almost definitely did not say it. The actual phrase shown here, which literally means "let them eat brioche," was first seen in this book. In this book, Rousseau recounts an anecdote about a great princess who, upon hearing that the peasants had no bread, said they could eat brioche instead. The problem is, in 1767, Marie was still living in Austria, and she was 12 years old. The quote is probably about an entirely different figure, maybe Maria Theresa of Spain or another 18th century royal. Marie was known for her extravagant lifestyle and was called Madame Deficit because her spending occurred at a time when France was seriously in debt. Making a scapegoat of Marie was a lot easier than dealing with the real.
There's no difference, bro, because y'all know Nepal got overthrown because like all of the politicians were corrupt and then giving their kids like crazy trips and money.
Like war debts and a broken tax system. There's also a chance she got a pretty bad rap because while she did have a pretty bougie lifestyle, that was kind of expected from the actual queen of a major country. But she also engaged in acts of charity and showed concern for the welfare of not just her children,
that's
but
good.
also the poor. She donated to orphanages, patronized hospitals, and even tried to reform the court's extravagances. And in the end, none of that mattered. You could argue that "let them eat cake" was one of the first memes, and like a lot of memes out there today, it didn't matter if it was true or not, it only mattered that a huge number of people believed it. Unlike most modern day memes, this one had real consequences, especially for Marie and her husband. They woke up in the morning with their heads firmly attached to their bodies and ended the day with their heads in a basket.
Oh my god.
The War of Worlds broadcast.
Yo, imagine them bringing the guillotine back. I feel like for certain niggas, bro, we gotta do that. Certain people, bro, just to like show some power, just fucking guillotine them, bro.
On October 30th, 1938, people who tuned into CBS radio heard something that they were not expecting, specifically an invasion from Mars. Although if you tuned in at the beginning, you heard a disclaimer from the young director of the Mercury Theater, Orson Welles, telling everyone that this was just an adaptation of his novel, The War of Worlds. They also announced it about halfway through, but by that time, people were too busy crowding the roads trying to escape or jumping out of windows, because they obviously didn't want to fight the aliens. At least that's what the newspapers wanted you to believe. Welles, who was just 23 at the time, was the creative force behind the Mercury Theater on the Air, a weekly dramatic radio program. He wanted to do a modernized version of the War of the Worlds, showing it as a series of live news bulletins interrupting regular programs. The reports became more and more frantic as they reported on explosions from Mars, a strange cylinder found in New Jersey, and finally increasing death and destruction as the invaders made their way across New Jersey, unleashing death rays.
See, the first mistake they had there is thinking aliens. The first place they were gonna go was New Jersey. You think some intergalactic beings is gonna be like, ah, yes, I've made it on Earth, New Jersey. Wow. Yo, they go to the gas station, they try to pump their gas, and then the gas station clerk's like, yo, wait, we gotta do that for you. I gotta do. There's a lot of other places they would go. Shout out New Jersey and shit. Shout out my New Jersey viewers and shit, but like, come on, bro.
And poison gas. In fairness, that doesn't sound too different from modern day New Jersey. It's been pointed out this was far from something that everyone was listening to. Most estimates place the War of the Worlds audience at under 1 million listeners, which is a fraction of the country's population. So why did the newspapers exaggerate the response?
It was just rumors.
And how many people were freaking out? We can sum it up in one word: fear. The newspaper owners figured that if they could show how radio inflamed listeners and caused unnecessary panic, people would stop listening and come back to the newspapers. That was a pretty
that was why?
funny theory, considering it did exactly the opposite. And if you think about it, that was very ironic. The media is trying to freak people out with half-truths and fake news just to get more engagement. Sure is lucky we don't fall for—
Yo, it's really crazy how this happens all the time too, y'all. Old forms of shit trying to like take over. Like, y'all know, I actually learned about this recently. So basically, they were like gonna like ban weed in the state of Texas, right? They were gonna ban it. Basically, there's some guy on like the governor's team that's like, yeah, we need to ban it. It's ruining people here, this and that. And then they did an expose on him. It turns out he's getting bribed by like alcohol companies. Cause like none of Gen Z, nobody's really drinking anymore. Everybody's just like smoking weed and like having weed pens and shit. Like genuinely, the alcohol industry, y'all, they're scared. The thing is, I don't mind drinking. I don't drink a lot, but like I'll do it every once in a while. But like they're scared, bro, cause like niggas was alcoholics before. Like, yeah, I know the older generations, bro, they would drink all the time. They go to bars every week. You feel me? Drink like 2 or 3 times. They drink a beer at night. And nowadays, bro, we don't want to do that shit. We don't care about that. Niggas either vape, goon, or smoke weed. But yeah, it's crazy, bro, how like older forms and like companies like this try to like manipulate things and stuff and try to like keep on their old times. Like, man, if alcohol, people are just gonna stop drinking it, bro, and the industry's gonna die. It is what it is, man. Who cares?
that kind of stuff anymore. Anyway, it's time to talk about Jesus. Before we talk about Jesus likely not being born on December 25th, rest assured, you can still sing carols.
Yo, you know what's crazy, bro? In Ethiopia, like Christianity, we don't celebrate Jesus being born on the 25th. It's not something celebrated. It's actually like there's a complete other day where we believe he was born. So I'm assuming that's probably what he's going to talk about.
Ugly sweaters and totally burn your coworkers in the white elephant gift exchange. And you can still—
You don't know. It's different. Some other Christianity sectors don't celebrate either. They may celebrate it on a different day, but like, yeah.
do all those things in December. But if you want to change your
Probably
Christmas
born in, like,
celebration
summer?
to spring or late
No, it's
fall,
not summer.
I'm not here to judge. Bible scholars have long debated the exact date of Jesus' birth. For a book that isn't shy about voicing an opinion on just about everything, it's remarkably silent about when the main character was born. Well, at least the main character who shows up in the second act. The Gospels of Matthew and Luke, which are the only ones that talk about Jesus' birth, don't even mention a month or a date or a season. But here's what they do say. Luke mentions that shepherds were in the fields tending their flocks at night when the angel announced Jesus' birth. But December would have been a weird time for shepherds to be out with their flocks. It was cold, the footing was often treacherous, and that was typically a time where the sheep would likely be under the cover of winter or sheepfolds. Of course, because it's religion, not everyone agrees. The Eastern Orthodox Church celebrated on January 6th, and others celebrated in the spring or fall, like March 25th, April 6th, or like September. So why the 25th? Well, the kids are out of school, travel's often treacherous, and everyone looks better in a sweater. Or another explanation is that the Christians and Roman Emperor Constantine kind of borrowed the date from 2 very popular pagan holidays. Sol Invictus, which honored the sun god and took place around the winter solstice.
That's my birthday.
And Saturnalia, a week-long festival of gift-giving, feasting, and general debauchery that ended around December 23rd. And by repurposing those holidays, they hope to convert some more people to the cause and celebrate the Son of God instead of the Sun. The Salem Witch Trials. When people think of the Salem Witch Trials, the image that's most like—
Yo, fun fact, all of us would be considered witches back then. Every single person here, in some way, we probably would have been considered a witch. Obviously me, probably would have been like, oh, your skin color. They damn near like murked anybody if they assumed they were a witch.
likely to come to mind is some unfortunate woman tied to a stake with the flames growing higher and higher as the bloodthirsty crowd roars with approval. Even though the US wasn't officially a country yet, this chapter in their history was a black mark for the colonies and served to show what happens when rumor, hysteria, and religious fervor are allowed to spread like wildfire among the population. Sorry, maybe a bit too soon for that one. It all started when several young girls began exhibiting strange, convulsive behavior. They claimed they were being tormented by witches. The girls accused local women of practicing witchcraft, and panic spread like wildfire. Last one, I promise. And soon the courts were overwhelmed with cases.
It's crazy because nowadays you would just see that and be like, oh, these people were mentally ill. They were probably just mentally ill, and then they didn't know how to diagnose that.
And when we're talking about hysteria, it was go big or go home in Salem. From February 1692 to May 1693, 200 people were accused of witchcraft, 30 were convicted, and 20 were executed. But here's the surprising part. No one was burned at the stake. That was more of a European punishment. Think Joan of Arc. But unlike the Beatles or Rolling Stones, it never really caught on in the US. So in a real good news, bad news situation, the convicted witches were still executed. They just did it by hanging instead. Well, 19 of the 20 were hanged. The 20th was a man named Miles Corey, who was pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea. You gotta admit, what the Puritans lacked in fairness and common sense, they made up for in coming up with unique and especially sadistic punishments. So why is Salem associated with the burning of witches? As we talked about earlier, burning was big in places like Germany, Scotland, and France. Thousands of people—
That's so fucked up. Like, they were so cruel back then, dude. Imagine watching somebody getting burnt alive. And they watch this shit live. Like, even when I see this type of stuff on, like, live, not Live Leak anymore, but, like, I don't even look at these type of videos anymore. But I remember times seeing videos like this. I'd never watch it again.
And the women were burned at the stake during the 15th through 17th centuries after being accused of witchcraft. One place where that didn't happen was England. The Brits preferred hanging because, you know, they're classy like that. Their traditions became jumbled with the story of Salem. Later,
I'd rather just get the guillotine, I'm gonna be honest, bro.
Generations began to assume that the notorious witch trials in New England must have followed the same gruesome rituals. And then pop culture grabbed hold. Films, books, plays, and even Halloween decorations. All picturing scenes of women in colonial garb being tied to stakes and set ablaze. Yep. Paul Revere time. Paul Revere wore a lot of hats. Well, he probably just wore that one tricorn hat, but he had a lot of different jobs. Revere was a silversmith, engraver, and big-time patriot who was part of the Sons of Liberty. The group you may remember from a little thing called the Boston Tea Party. And on the night of April 18th, 1775,
maybe I should notice,
Revere was tasked with riding from Boston to Lexington. His job was to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock that British troops were marching.
Oh, the British are coming. Yo, is that where that one meme is from with the dude with the lantern? This is where I learned my history. Through fucking memes. Yo, that's crazy, bro.
Marching to arrest them and to seize military supplies stockpiled by colonial militias. But Paul wasn't the only rider who had that job. William Dawes was given a different route out of Boston a little earlier than Revere, in case one of them was captured. Once they met up in Lexington by Dr. Samuel Prescott, a local physician who just happened to be out late visiting his fiancée. And shortly after they met up, the trio encountered a British patrol. Dawes escaped, but was forced to abandon his horse and walk back. Paul was interrogated and released, also without his horse. In fact, only the doctor was the one who made it through. So why do we only know about Paul Revere? We have Washington Irving to thank for that. In 1861, on the eve of the Civil War, the poet wanted to fire up the country and inspire unity and patriotism. His poem began, "Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere." What's not to love?
Ooh, that sounds kind of fire.
It's catchy, it rhymes, and it sounds a lot better than "Listen, my children, and try not to talk. I'll tell you the story of the doc." Catherine the Great. Throughout history, rulers have met with some
propaganda with
and bizarre deaths. But it would be hard to top the story of the demise of Catherine the Great of Russia. You might know what I'm talking about. The story of how Catherine met her demise while attempting to build a more intimate relationship with a horse. One of the most popular accounts.
What? Y'all think Putin fucked a horse? White woman stereotype? Nah, facts. Why does this fit that exact white woman stereotype, bro?
Describes her as lying on a platform and then the horse slipped and she was crushed to death. By the way, if you've never heard the story, I'm sorry for giving you the visual. That will be in your head forever.
Average country
But here's the deal. It never happened. Horses are known for their stability, and it would be very unlikely to just slip. I'm joking. That's not the ridiculous part. She actually died of a stroke at age 67 while on the...
Yo, that's fucked up, bro. Why would they make a rumor that she fucked a horse?
Just like Elvis. Thank you. Thank you very much. So where did this story of horse-related death start? It's actually just a story as old as time. Pissed off white guys who were jealous of her success as Empress of Russia.
Nah,
She took over after her
that's
husband Peter
evil
III
word.
was deposed in a coup. She ruled for 35 years and was known for her forward thinking. She was a huge factor in modernizing Russia. But this was also a time when women were expected to be modest, obedient, and domestic. And Catherine was none of those things. She thought for herself, wouldn't...
A lot of dudes already don't like women in power now. Imagine back then. I don't know how it was in Russia, but I'm assuming women didn't have the right to vote. They had to like submit to their husbands no matter what. And she's just running the fucking country.
Back down, and worst of all, was very open with her sexuality and had numerous partners. In other words, she was a huge threat to the patriarchy, and the myth was created to punish her, even after her death, transforming her reputation as a respected monarch into that of a grotesque
Damn, that's low-key aura though. She had multiple partners, and she was queen in that type of time.
figure of ridicule. This myth kind of shows a familiar pattern in which powerful women are often demonized. Cleopatra, Mary Queen of Scots, Marie Antoinette, and many others.
I literally seen this, bro. I see dudes like, it'd be like some female politician, they're like, oh, she's a hoe. It's like, what, bro? What are you talking about, bro? This ain't the 1900s, nigga. And True, I don't give a f if whoever's representing, bro, as a dude, I don't care if they sleeping with 100 people, bro. They giving us good shit. They doing good for the country, nigga. I don't give a fuck. Kamala kind of bad, though, Loki, when she was younger. Yeah.
Have been subjected to pretty similar rumors. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure to subscribe and click this video.
Okay, good video. If you're watching on the 2, make sure to join the Discord and watch the streams.
Subscribe to Tommy and FG.